Today, we're going to dig into something really fundamental. It's this deep and, honestly, often invisible connection between a woman's economic security and her right to a safe place to live. It's a relationship that can shape her entire life, but so often it's built on a foundation that's anything but stable.
We all know this idea, right? It's something we're taught from day one. The family. It's supposed to be our safe harbor, our first and last line of defense. It's held up as the very bedrock of our communities. But what happens when that bedrock isn't as solid as we think? What if it has a massive crack running right through it? And right here, this is where things get really complicated. Because a family isn't just about love and support. It's also a powerful economic unit. And once you start to see it that way, you begin to understand the huge financial risks that women, specifically, often face without even realizing it.
So let's just ask the big question head on. Is it possible that this very structure, the one we idealize, actually creates systemic risks that chip away at women's financial security and their well-being? Well, the data is pretty clear on this. Even when women contribute so much to the family, and I'm talking about all that unpaid labor like childcare, managing the household, their actual economic power within that family can be much, much lower. It creates this hidden vulnerability. So if that relationship ends, whether it's through divorce or the death of a partner, that whole unstable foundation can just crumble, leaving her and her children in a really precarious spot. So what's the fix? We tend to look to the law for answers. But here's a really critical idea we have to get our heads around. Not all equality is actually created equal. It's a subtle difference, but believe me, the impact it has on people's lives is enormous. Okay, so think of it like this. On one side, you have formal equality. This means the laws look neutral on paper. They say, we treat everyone exactly the same. Sounds good, right? But then you have substantive equality. This is all about fairness in the real world. It recognizes that because of historical disadvantages, you can't just treat everyone the same and expect a fair outcome. It's about making sure everyone actually has the same real-world opportunity to succeed. And this is exactly where we see the gender-neutral trap. You might have a law that says property gets registered to the head of household. Sounds neutral, but who is that in practice? Almost always a man. Or you have marital property laws that don't put a value on all that unpaid caregiving, work that is overwhelmingly done by women. So these laws, which look fair on the surface, end up reinforcing that unstable foundation we talked about. So let's drill down on one of the most devastating consequences of all this. What happens when your home, the one place you're supposed to be safe, becomes a source of danger? It turns out there is a direct and, frankly, horrifying line that connects domestic violence to homelessness. Just take a second and look at this number, 50 to 60%. Behind this statistic is a devastating crisis that perfectly connects the two things we've been talking about, having a home and being safe. And here's what that staggering number means. For the majority of women who find themselves without a home, the journey to the street started right at their own front door. They were faced with an impossible choice: stay and face the violence, or run and lose absolutely everything. The very act of trying to find safety is what cost them their home. And the thing is, the danger doesn't just stop when a woman leaves. This study from the Council of Europe makes it painfully clear the risk of violence can actually go up after a separation. Suddenly, finding a new safe home isn't just about stability, it's about survival. I mean, this is the obvious next question, isn't it? If women are being forced to flee their own homes just to stay alive, there has to be a system in place to catch them, right? So, is there? This chart gives us a pretty stark answer. What it's doing is measuring the number of shelter beds available against the standards set by the Istanbul Convention, which is a major international agreement on this issue. And as you can see, the gap is massive. Even in the EU, more than half the beds that are needed, they just aren't there. The safety net is full of holes. But look, it's not all bad news. For decades, the international community has actually been working on a blueprint for change. There are powerful legal frameworks out there designed specifically to protect a woman's right to a home. And we're not just talking about dry legal documents here. Just listen to the heart of this UN definition. It's about a core human need. It's the right to a safe place to live, in peace, and with dignity. That's a promise. And that promise? It's written down in major international laws. Take CEDAW. That's the big international treaty on women's rights. It's super explicit. It guarantees equal property rights in a marriage and ensures women have adequate living conditions.
Another huge one, the ICESCR, says this right to housing belongs to everyone. So the blueprint, it's there. It's in black and white.
So when these laws say adequate housing, what are they really talking about? Well, the UN is really clear on this. It is so much more than just a roof over your head. It means you're legally protected from being kicked out. It means you have running water. It means you can actually afford it, and that it's safe and accessible. It's a whole vision for what it means to live a dignified life. And this brings us right to the heart of the problem. We've got the blueprint, all these international laws, and then we have the reality for women on the ground. The real challenge is the absolutely enormous gap between the two. So why is this gap so huge? Well, it's a mix of big systemic failures. For starters, you have local traditions that are discriminatory, just straight up overriding national laws. Then you have the people in the system, judges, public officials, whose own biases get in the way of the law being applied fairly. And just as important, so many women don't even know that these are their rights. Or if they do, they don't have the money or the social support to actually fight for them. And here's a brutal real-world example of what that gap looks like, this practice of property grabbing. A woman's husband dies, and his relatives just show up and throw her and her kids out of their home, claiming it's their customary right. And this happens even when the national law says that property belongs to her. Look, changing the laws is the visible part of the work. You could even say it's the easy part. But the real, deep, massive challenge is everything happening below the surface. It's the slow, generational work of changing the social and cultural patterns, the attitudes and traditions that let this kind of discrimination continue. So we have the blueprint, the plan for a safe and stable home for every single person, and it's guaranteed by human rights. But a blueprint isn't a house. So the question we're left with is this: what is it going to take for us, as a global society, to finally pick up the tools and start building?